As far as I'm concerned, XRP was created to avert World War III.
Well, that's a powerful statement. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, because, when you're starting to really take down the banksters right now, the banksters, they're getting ready to roll out the tanks in the street. You understand? And the only way that they could sort of calm them down, say, listen, okay, you guys are out of business, but if you buy a little bit of XRP, which they could buy a hell of a lot more than just a little bit, if you think that they're not heavily already invested, okay, they don't want to lose the power. This is all about the power. It's not about the XRP. It's about losing their power. They're being chased out of their own banks right now. They know that Well, good evening, folks. We got Patriot Underground. We've been actually going back and forth for a little while. We finally got them through some of our people on our Telegram right down below. Before we get started, folks, hit the pause button, go over to Rumble, and make sure you subscribe as quickly as possible. I don't have to tell you what's going on here. QFS1776.com is the holy grail of what's to come. Not maybe, definitely. Get yourself some t-shirts, okay? You got to get yourself decorated so that people understand that something is coming, and that something is the quantum financial system. Unified TV right down below. Stop giving your money to the monsters like, Netflix, and redirect your money if you want the monsters to disappear. It's very simple. Gold and silver at the cheapest prices. Use promo code Mel Carmine, okay? Gold and silver. Also, our Telegram group down below. Also, if you want to buy $10,000 of XRP or more, even $10 million, doesn't matter how much you want to buy. We got 300 brokers spread all over the world. We can get you as much as you want. And we have literally hundreds and hundreds of very satisfied customers. Also, this is a new announcement. In the event that you have had mortgage forgiveness, student loan forgiveness, car loan forgiveness, contact me also at QFS1776@gmail.com, and I will put you on the show. We've had already at least a half a dozen or so people show up. We got like 3 more in the queue that are coming. A gentleman who is actually an administrator in one of my rooms. He got a message from Chase Bank, basically telling him for every dollar that he paid in interest, they're going to give him $8.91 back, and the mortgage is no more. So don't tell me Jassara and Nassara is not happening. Patriot Underground happens to know a thing or two about Jassara and Nassara. I think he's got like a 17-degree black belt, if you're feeling me, right? That special number 17 that we're not allowed to talk about that letter. It's unbelievable, Patriot Underground. Pretty soon they're going to own the number 17, and we're not even going to be able to, talk numbers anymore. Ridiculous is the only word that comes to mind. Brother, welcome to the show. How you doing? Tell us everything you know about Jassara and Nassara. One of the things that really grabbed me, one day you said, mainstream media is basically throwing so much shit against the wall, and they think that the harder they throw it and the more shit they throw against the wall and the faster they beat the drum, that we're all just going to naturally believe it, and it doesn't work anymore. And you know what? He's right. It doesn't work anymore. Brother, welcome to the show, man. Lay it on us.
Wow, thank you so much for that intro, Mel. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me. It's really an honor to be on your show. And I do appreciate the opportunity to connect with your audience and to expand this ongoing conversation that really is the quest for truth, that we call the Great Awakening. So I really do appreciate you having me. So, I know that you're very big on the QFS, and I think it's a great topic. I love talking about it. And what I really like to start the discussion is kind of talking about what the whole quantum initiative really is, what this whole quantum physics thing really is to set up where we're going economically and also other categories as well. But we'll stick to the quantum financial system. But really, I think it's important for folks to know that the quantum initiative, really quantum physics, is the study of the world at a microscopic level. And it's kind of a good metaphor because all of us are starting to look at the world at through a much different lens than we used to. And you might say we're looking at things at a microscopic level, culturally, societally, et cetera. But the quantum initiative was signed into law. I don't remember exactly when, but it was, quote, to accelerate quantum research and development for the economic and national security of the United States. That was written into the law. And this goes back to Trump's first term in office. And it's very interesting because if you look at the economic aspect of that definition, you can clearly attribute the quantum financial system to that effort. And likewise, you could also examine the national security portion. And it's easy to see how the quantum voting system, Starlink, and Space Force really all factor into those aspects of our national security, as well as our voting system and our communications and military operations, all of which, by the way, are now run, as I'm sure you know, directly through Space Force. So all of this really ties together. And I would also remind everybody that not only did Trump establish this branch of the armed forces, he also handpicked all the generals, all of which are still in place. So right now, Space Force is essentially quarterbacking the United States military. All of the comms are going directly through there. So if you're questioning who's in control, despite the optics of what's going on right now, it's important to remind yourself of these key facts. These aren't conspiracy theories. These aren't just wild rumors. These are actually verifiable facts. And really, you could extend that metaphor if you want. You could say that Trump is the coach as the commander-in-chief of the military. But quantum physics, going back to this topic here, the quantum initiative is all about modernizing the world by implementing the principles of quantum physics, which are based upon quantum mechanics. And I'm not a scientist, but my general understanding of quantum physics is that it's defined as the study of matter and energy at its most fundamental level. And of course, it's based upon quantum mechanics, which is the fundamental theory which provides a description of the physical properties of nature with emphasis on the subatomic level. And it's really important to understand these key aspects because it all plays into the economic system, as I'm going to talk about in just a minute. And by the way, this whole quantum mechanics arose due to fundamental problems in reconciling what scientists were observing with classical physics. But that's a topic for another day. So the QFS, having established all that about the basis of what this quantum revolution is really all about, we can then branch off and we can talk about all the applications which are going to come, which comprise much of the infrastructure of the new world, which is being built right now as we speak. So let's talk about the QFS. And in order to properly frame the conversation, of course, we need to understand the problems that the QFS is going to solve. And I've actually heard you talk about these in great detail and what the quantum financial system is going to prevent moving forward. And it's also important to establish that really devaluation, I'm not sure if you heard my interview with SG Anon the other day, but he was talking about how the term inflation is in some ways sort of a misnomer. What it really means is devaluation of currency. That's what inflation really is. And that the value of currency, of course, determines the cost of goods. And, you know, he took us all the way back to the Knights Templar and, you know, back in history where this whole system that we're fighting against originated because it was a system that we were given where our currencies were really not based on any standard measure of value. And historically, what these banks have done, these banksters, is essentially they provided a service, albeit a fraudulent one, that made wealth more efficient at that time in the sense that it could be transferred, it could be traveled with relative ease. But it wasn't necessarily a system of standard weights and measures or standard measure of value between two individuals per se, but rather it was a governmental standard, which was set by everyone at the top of the financial pyramid, of course. And they're the ones who determine the supply. They're the ones who determine basically how much currency is in the system at any given time. And keep in mind that they control this entire charade by the amount of currency that they dump into the system or remove from it. And on top of that, and I was just talking about this, I think the other day when I put out a podcast on this topic, they determine the interest rates and they determine the availability of credit. So you've got a small amount of credit currency rather in the system, it has a great amount of value. And of course, the opposite is true. But if you have to remember that the fiat currency system is based on nothing, really. It's based on thin air. It's based upon the promise, if anything, of the institution that lent it. And we know exactly the type of people that we're dealing with, right? So these people have no accountability. they have hoarded all of these precious metals underground. And of course, the alliance has recovered all of that stolen wealth, which is really fueling the repatriation of wealth in the RV. But prior to this, they didn't have to disclose what they had. They didn't have any accountability at all. They didn't have to say how much gold they had, how much silver they had, where it was. And then, you take that simple fact and then you couple it with the reality and the control that they got over the banks who assign the value to the currency. And that's enabled them to get us into this situation. They just ran hog wild. And that's why we are where we are. And the path moving forward is to end this financial stranglehold, which is really this debt prison matrix. And the key to that is to ensure a worldwide, decentralized, and transparent system of weights and measures, which currencies are forced to adhere to. And to that end, I think during his first term, I believe it was February 4th, I think, of 2017, Trump signed an executive order to begin the process of moving the U.S. Treasury to align itself with the QFS. So this is really going on. This is really happening, as you know. And it really is, there's so many different aspects that we could get into. We could talk about it as a consciousness-based system. We could talk about it as a precious metal-backed system to prevent corruption. There's lots of different avenues that we could talk about here. But I thought maybe I'd kick the ball back to you and ask you, which road do you want to go down? You want to talk about, or maybe comment on some of the things that I pointed out so far. Which road do you really want to take this down, Mel?
Well, you call them banksters. I couldn't agree with you more. I understand that the banks of tomorrow, the ones that are going to survive, that are going to adapt the software called PolySign, are going to have to basically be called financial service centers. I believe some of them are already calling themselves that. I also believe that the gold and silver will be backing the rainbow currency. However, I do believe that whatever is left over, which is quite a lot when you take into account that the gold in the Philippines still has not been, accounted for, gold and silver, which there's quite more than there was in the Vatican, from what I understand. It's got that whole entire thing with the Japanese War, World War II. They thought they were going to win the war, go back and take their gold. They didn't win the war. The gold's still there. Obviously, Marco got his hands on a little bit of it, from what I understand. That's how he became fabulously wealthy, and his wife owned, 72,000 pairs of shoes. Okay, but the reality is that whatever's left on the gold and silver, I believe, is going to be digitized, because once you digitize it on the XRPL, the most powerful blockchain known to mankind, the one that is scalable to 3.5 trillion transactions per second, has already been proven. And the silver will be backing up not the XLM or the gold backing up XRP. It's going to be the other way around, where that gold inventory is going to reside on those blockchains, meaning we're going to digitize and tokenize the gold and the silver. Does that make sense?
I happen to agree with you on that. Yes.
Okay. QFS, you're talking the same language I'm talking, damn it. I mean, QFS 45, 17, Jasara Nasara, Starlink, Klaus Schwab, Space Force, XRP Army Original Army 1.0, XRP Army, which is the one that I like to take full credit for launching, XRP Army 2.0, which consists of Kabbalah Guru and Gilad Jed and a bunch of newcomers like Tracy Heat. There's a lot of people that are starting to understand that maybe the guy down in Costa Rica is not so crazy after all. And basically, I think you're verifying and you're proving that my sanity is just on par and right with yours. So, when I told my wife that I'm going to go, because I was literally watching Digital Asset Investor, Digital Perspectives, Crypto Eddie, Alex Cobb, XRP Original Army, very intelligent. But I don't want to be intelligent and with all these sophisticated college words that you learn that mean really nothing at the end of the day about the old world that's about to die. I want to be intelligent about the world that we can start to see that's about to emerge, the one that's called Jasara Nasara. See, when I got into this, Patriot, I really came to the conclusion very quickly. And that conclusion was that Klaus Schwab was not on the field unopposed all by himself, kicking ass. And when I took a closer look and I said, holy shit, Jasara Nassara is on the field and we're winning by a lot. And then I started to connect the dots and I told my wife, I'm going to start a channel about XRP being tied into 17, the QFS, Jasara Nassara, 45, the low-lying satellites, the nodes that reside on this. She said, you're out of your freaking mind. And the computers, the quantum computer, one in Reno, one in Spain, one in Dubai, etc. She thought I lost my freaking ever-loving mind. But I think you're speaking the same language, brother.
Well, I think so. I definitely think that you probably know more about XRP than I do, but I'll tell you, my general take is, well, I'll tell you what I know about XRP and then my general take on, crypto in general. With the full disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor or anything like that. I'm just an ordinary American with a viewpoint. So folks have to do their own research, right? My view on digital currency is, it's always in terms of how is this going to fit in, right, to the Jasara economic model. And I've listened to a lot of different perspectives on this. And a lot of folks are saying that cryptocurrency, the way it exists today, with all of the different altcoins, and I mean, I don't even know how many there are, how many exist. Of course, a lot of them are shit coins, as we know, but a lot of these are going to go away and really won't exist once the QFS, at least my take on it is, a lot of them won't exist once the QFS is rolled out, simply because the precious metal-backed system and what the quantum system is going to offer is going to make a lot of them unnecessary, perhaps even obsolete. However, that's not to suggest that the technology that exists isn't really, the functionality couldn't be transferred or repurposed in terms of the blockchain, which is the basic functionality of digital currency. I do believe that that has a important role to play, at least in the short term, with the overall goal of modernizing and then ultimately maximizing the efficiency of the new economy. And this all has to be done in a way that is entirely decentralized and transparent, because regardless of what currency we're talking about, the fundamental problem that we face is that we don't have transparency, of course, and we don't have decentralization. We really have no control over our money. And the quantum financial system is going to give that control back to us. And I'll talk about that a little bit. But my understanding is that, well, I mean, let me back up for just a minute. I should also mention that really some of the stories coming out about Bitcoin and the ties to some of the nefarious activity, I think raises some questions, at least in my mind, about the future of Bitcoin and whether or not that was an operation that was cabal oriented, let's just say. As far as I'm concerned, the jury's still out on a lot of issues surrounding cryptocurrency. However, that doesn't mean, like I said, that I don't think there are certain ones like XRP that have an absolutely amazing future. And so my understanding is of XRP is it was conceived of, I think, all the way back in 2005. And it came out as a distributed open source protocol financial service, in a sense, to provide secure and, like you pointed out, nearly instantaneous payment options at a negligible cost. And it was designed to directly compete with the SWIFT system and then subsequently make that obsolete. And for those who don't know, I mean, I'm sure your audience is pretty well versed, but for those in the audience who may not know, SWIFT stands for the Society for World Interbank Financial Telecommunication. And this is a privately owned company, I believe out of Belgium. I may be incorrect on that.
That is correct.
Okay. And it provides services related to execution of financial transactions and payments between banks all over the world. And so as its primary function really is as a bank messaging network, really, through which international payments are initiated. So it acts as a carrier of messages containing payment instructions between different financial institutions. So more or less, it essentially links them together. But the problem is, again, going back to those two words that I mentioned before, I could add more to decentralization and transparency are such key words, but I could add a couple of more. In this case, we're talking about the SWIFT system. It's inefficient and it's expensive. And not to mention, it's controlled by the enemy. And so transfers through SWIFT, they typically, my understanding is that they pass through multiple banks, multiple destinations before reaching their final destination. And of course, every time they make a stop, somebody takes a cut, right? And that makes them very time consuming, expensive, and of course, lacking in transparency. So Ripple is a brilliant solution to this. So it solves these issues using blockchain technology and provides that transparency and makes financial transfers near instantaneous, which is why, of course, the SEC went after them, because as we know, the SEC, like all establishment institutions, exists only to protect the interests of the cabal. So, my general understanding, not being a computer scientist or an expert, is that that blockchain addresses many of the issues that are related to the fundamental problems that we're facing right now with our currency in terms of decentralization, transparency, and ultimately control. Because what it does is it functions as an open source immutable ledger, which means that it can't be altered, it can't be manipulated, it can't be defrauded in any way. And in a similar way, we could also talk about quantum notes, but I'll pause. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, there's 26,000 tokens out there, Patriot, on the ground. 26,000. 2 years ago, there was 14,000. Okay, they're literally getting, they're increasing by 20 new tokens every hour. There's like somebody in the garage. Probably by the time this conversation is over, 3 new tokens are going to launch. Okay, 99.99999% of them are going to go away. Okay, when I say 99, I'm talking maybe 40, 50 coins may survive. That's it. That's going to be the whole monetary system for the entire world. The ISO 20022 will survive. Those are going to be the ones that run the world, the financial system. XRP will be the bus that drives Jasara and Nasara. They need something that moves fast. XRP checks all the boxes. They need something that moves where it costs 0.000004 of a penny to move a transaction. Michael Arrington from Arrington Capital, this is for your audience. My audience knows this verbatim. He moved $50 million 4 years ago. It took exactly 2.8 seconds. The story lives on the internet. Check me out. Okay, fact check me if you like. And it cost him 30 cents. $50 million, 2.8 seconds, 30 cents. That's like free.
That's incredible.
Okay, and it's done that consistently. We moved trillions of dollars. There was a big hoopla about 9-10 months ago. It's like, the usual ammo, the distraction. Look on the left while we do something on the right. So there's a big hoopla with the Kabuki Theater lawsuit, which I believe has been settled a long, long, long time ago. Okay, and they just keep, basically buying time. Why? They're buying time because they're not ready to serve what? The wine, Jasara and Nasara. That's what they're buying time for. So with that said, I could tell you who is the only out of 26,000 tokens, who's the only one that gets invited to the G20, the G7, the G30, Davos, the Central Bank of England, the Central Bank of Canada, the Central Bank of Australia, the Central Bank of Italy? Always XRP. It's never XLM, even though they are going to be a force to contend with. We own quite a bit of XLM. It's not XDC. It's not Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't even have a CEO. Bitcoin is a disaster waiting to happen. That's what Bitcoin is. Okay. Yes, the Zims, the Bolivars, the Dinars, those are all going to be backed by gold. I understand Zimbabwe is going to be potentially the new, wealthiest country in the world. They got more gold in the ground there per square inch than anywhere else in the world. A lot of those African countries, they're wealthy in resources. That's why the Chinese are there. China.
Absolutely. Well, that's why they were some of the first nations that were bankrupted, because these demons went in there. They knew where all the resources were. And that's why it's ironic in a sense that, but these are some of the most natural resource rich countries in the world. You're absolutely right. So if all of this gold is in precious metals and all of this treasure is being recovered from the dumbs and the tunnels and all of these different locations. And by the way, I didn't know, I'd like you to maybe talk a little bit more about that stash in it was Peru, I think you mentioned. I hadn't really heard too much about that. But if all of that wealth is being repatriated, you're absolutely right. These nations will be amongst the most wealthy in the world. It makes perfect sense.
The Philippines is I live there, but you go on vacation for 2 weeks, but when you're there for almost 3 months, you live there. Okay, So I was there for almost 3 months, not too long ago, right before this pandemic thing, right? And so we went there, and we talked to a lot of the locals, and I was able to get some information from some of the people. They're obviously very pro Marco, okay, because they don't understand communism. They don't understand what it is. Communism obviously is trying to take over the world right now, and we're fighting it. And when we shut off the camera, we stopped the record button. I want to talk to you privately because we're doing something that I think is going to be very, very huge. But there's literally quintillions of tons of gold underneath the ground that the Japanese thought they were going to win the war. They were going to go back and get, and that gold is still there today. They have no idea how much gold they literally have underneath the ground. It's
Wow.
they're going to have to need special X-ray machines to literally X-ray the ground to find as much of it as they can find. Obviously, the Philippines is made up of about 7,400 islands. A lot of it, I believe, is in Mindanao. It's a pretty dangerous area still. But now you got Marcos's son at the helm. So we'll see what happens. But, this thing, as far as I'm concerned, Patriot Underground, I don't think it's going to happen as fast as people want it to. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know everybody wants it to get done yesterday. Believe me, nobody more than this dude right here. Okay. I see this thing dragging out potentially. This would be the worst case scenario, 2025, 2026. Is that in the cards with you? Yes or no?
Well, it's very difficult when you talk about timelines. As I think you probably learned along the way of your journey, I've certainly learned it along the way, talking about when things are likely to happen. But I can certainly give you my general take on it. As far as the early stages, I think that we're already in the early stages of the rollout. My take on this, and I've talked about this on my show quite a bit, and I've also had some very interesting guests talk about this as well. That Gene Decode talk about this, Jim Willey, some very knowledgeable folks who are insiders as well, and who have pointed out that the BRICS nations, the BRICS alliance, really is the rollout of GESARA. It's taking shape in these countries who really already established a system where they're forcing other nations to do business with them in precious metal-backed currencies only. And that's, of course, what's really driving the dissolution of NATO. It's ultimately the primary fight over whether or not this U.S. fiat dollar currency in any form whatsoever is going to survive. They're doing everything that they can, and they've pulled all different types of scams and tricks out. And I do believe that, in certain ways, like you mentioned, Bitcoin, I think that they were trying to pull a fast one on the people there to try to co-opt this movement. But ultimately, this is already happening, and it's forcing the shift in the balance of power. We're seeing, really Western Europe right now is entirely dependent upon Russian gas, and that's how this, of course, ties into the conflict over there. And so, therefore, the stranglehold of the cabal is loosening more and more, and the defections are taking place in these NATO countries. They're going to be, I do believe, there are going to be a lot of military coups that we're going to see in the not too distant future. And of course, Germany is, right at the center of this debacle because Germany powers all of Western Europe. So I happen to believe that behind the scenes, that the establishment financial system that's controlled by the cabal has really, in so many ways, already been systemically taken down. And what we're living through right now in so many different categories, I mean, we're focusing right now on the quantum financial system, but in so many different categories across the board, we're, I believe, witnessing if you want to call it a scripted movie, if you want to call it a pantomime, it's not to suggest that I don't believe that the cabal is still actively a threat and they don't still have teeth, but a lot of what we're witnessing, and we could talk about so many different examples, is fake. It's not real. And it's intended, I do believe, to bring the people up to speed, bring the sleepers up to speed a little bit before the hammer really drops, so to speak. So in terms of the financial system, I think this is already happening. But what's at the core of this whole struggle is the fight between good and evil. And so I think that obviously, control of our economics, control of our money is a fundamental part of that fight, because evil has always used money as a financial tool of enslavement against us. And so I think that we're already starting to see it in its early stages. How long it's going to take in terms of years for the full rollout, I wish I could say. My general take is that probably it's not going to be years once we have a major crash, which I think is going to be coming in the not too distant future. I happen to think that this is part of the climactic ending of this sting operation that's going to include a controlled demolition of the fiat economy. And after that, I think we're going to see a much more rapid rollout. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but I don't think that if all of this infrastructure is in place, as we believe, and all of this wealth has been repatriated, and the QFS, Charlie Ward, I don't know where you're at with Charlie. He's some people like him, some people don't. I happen to listen to him. I happen to, respect his views on certain things. He says that the quantum financial system is hooked up. I mean, it's already functioning in many different parts of the world, specifically the BRICS countries. And he recently talked about the United States has it hooked up, ready to go. They just haven't flipped the switch. If you want to take a ridiculously oversimplified metaphor, that's kind of where we're at right now. So I don't think that it's a matter, however long we end up waiting, I don't think that it's necessarily a matter of them not being ready in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the wealth repatriation, in terms of having everything lined up and ready to go. I think that it's very possible that it's already ready to go, but we're waiting for that big shock event. And I don't think we're going to see anything in terms of, any major changes in our financial system until we have that shock event to trigger the mass awakening and to wake up the sleepers. That's my take on it. So I don't think we're looking at years. I really don't.
I don't either, but that would be the worst case scenario. You have to always put into the equation, Patriot Dave. I'm not a pessimistic guy. I'm a guy that likes to walk my feet on terra firma. Okay. In regards to your question regarding Charlie Ward, I have a problem. My problem is I like everybody. I want everybody to get along. And I see this Patriot movement where everybody's jockeying for position. Everybody's trying to make money, and it's all about the money. To me, it's not about all the money. To me, it's about how many people can I wake up to this XRP? How many people is Mel Carmine going to be responsible that are going to be a direct, multi-billionaire status because I told somebody about it? I want them to put on my gravestone when I'm 2,896 years old. Here lies Mel Carmine, okay? And because he wouldn't shut his mouth, there's, an extra 250,000 multi-billionaires in the world. Yes, that's what I want. Look, when you take this whole thing logically, and you look at the fact that there is 26,000, tokens out there, and by the time we're done with this podcast, there's going to be 26,003 tokens because somebody's going to finish 3 tokens in their garage and they're going to launch, and a bunch of stupid people are going to put their money in there. The reality is only one has the lawsuit. That should get you scratching your head. Say, why that one? That's the one they don't want you to look at. They want you to look at that shiny thing called Bitcoin that doesn't do a thing. If you were to go into a court of law, Patriot Underground, and you were called in front of a judge, and the judge says, okay, Mr. Satoshi Nakamoto, let's say you were the Satoshi Nakamoto. What does Bitcoin do? Well, it's a hedge against inflation. Wrong. That's not a functionality. Well, it's a store of value. Wrong. You have to solve a problem. Oh, it's a payment system. How long does your payment system take? Oh, it takes 6 hours to 3 days. How much does it cost to move 2 Bitcoins? Oh, it costs $7,000. That's not going to work. It's being rejected in San Salvador. The people there are burning the Bitcoin ATM machines. It's complete craziness. Okay. And all these Bitcoin Nancies who are heavily invested, if they were smart, they would take their Bitcoin and move it over to XRP and wait. That's all you got to do is take your Bitcoin, move it to XRP and wait. Because at the end of the day, Bitcoin doesn't have a functionality. And Ethereum is the biggest scam ever. Corporate unknown. If you watch a guy by the name of Digital Asset Investor, he's one of the biggest in the XRP movement. And, he has literally uncovered so many videos where they brag about how they pulled off one of the biggest scams in the history of digital assets. And they openly, we got hundreds and hundreds of videos. You can literally fire everybody that is part of the XRP Ripple lawsuit and send them home, all the attorneys. You don't need an attorney. Just send in Brad Kimes and the digital asset, the digital asset investor, DAI, just those two guys alone. They have amassed so much. You got to put the videos right in front of the judge and say, okay, watch video number 1, watch video number 17, watch video 117, watch video number 500. And at the end of those 500 videos, if the judge is saying, that we got to drag on this case, the judge is going to have a little piece of paper in her pocket. It's going to say, you're under arrest. You understand? Because it's a scam. The whole thing's a scam. As far as I'm concerned, XRP was created to avert World War III.
Well, that's a powerful statement. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, because, when you're starting to really take down the banksters right now, the banksters, they're getting ready to roll out the tanks in the street. You understand? And the only way that they could sort of calm them down, say, listen, okay, you guys are out of business, but if you buy a little bit of XRP, which they could buy a hell of a lot more than just a little bit, if you think that they're not heavily already invested, okay, they don't want to lose the power. This is all about the power. It's not about the XRP. It's about losing their power. They're being chased out of their own banks right now. They know that the gig is up. You know who a guy by the name of, he was on stage with none other than Gary Gensler, Tim Draper. You familiar who Tim Draper is?
I've heard the name, but I'm not too familiar with him.
Tim Draper said, when we roll this digital asset, they say, oh, no worry, that thing is going to go away. Next thing you know, the bankers are sort of locking arms and they say, okay, slap them with a lawsuit, because they realize their time is up. They've had, full range of power for a long, long, long time. And now they're going to lose their power. Now, some of them that have nothing to do with those nefarious activity that are not going to go away, that are going to be able to hang around, are probably going to be part of these new financial service centers, but they're not going to be in a position to where they can literally draw blood from us.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All of the hamster wheels are going to be burnt out. Every one of them. We're about to get off the hamster wheel. The only thing is we have to wake up the normies. There's still a lot of normies to wake up out there. There's a lot of people that still refuse to believe,
Absolutely.
But if you were right now, the entire financial system was to crash on down and there's not the answer, XRP, believe me, the nuclear missiles will be up in the air.
Well, that's tough to argue with. I mean, I happen to, agree with you that XRP is going to be a fundamentally important lifeblood of this new system. Where it goes from there. I mean, there's so many different aspects with the quantum financial system. I mean, it's consciousness based. I mean, this is the element of it that really blows my mind, is that it can actually, according to some research or information that I've come across, it actually has the ability, using AI, to detect a certain resonant frequency range, to be able to scan your frequency, to be able to ultimately prevent those with evil intent for using money as a tool to finance evil, because that's really what they've always done. I mean, we're talking about these illicit revenue streams as a really nice way of saying adrenochrome, organ harvesting, child trafficking, and this is, and it's much worse than any of us could possibly imagine. And that's really part of, a huge aspect of this as well, that when it comes to how money plays into this whole puzzle here, what it's really about is preventing this wickedness from being funded ever again. And because really, you can conceal your intentions, you can conceal a lot of different things, but you really can't conceal, your ultimate frequency range. And the core of the quantum financial system is designed to deliver us out of this economic debt prison. Yes, absolutely. And into economic equality. And this is exactly what you were talking about, by empowering human beings in the sense that they're going to be given control over their wealth. They're going to be given control over their money. Because right now, we've got a system, and we're born into this, of course, and many generations have been born into it as well before we came along, where we're completely enslaved. From the moment that we come into this world, we are completely enslaved. And when you really think about it, what is a slave? A slave is someone who lacks control over their own resources,
Right.
who is deprived the use of their own money, their own wealth.
Right.
That's really what it's all about. So when you think about how financial institutions and other organizations that conspire with them directly can charge you fees, can go into your accounts, can coerce you to get into these one-sided contracts that are, just completely against anything that's in your interests, just so that you can do business, just so you can have the basic functionality that you need to live. And you have to end up in these contracts just to function in society. That is going to go away, because that shows you who's really in control. And so the way I've heard it described is that instead of the banks being in control of our money and holding it, and ultimately, you've heard all the stories. Every day that passes, I hear more stories about people who are unable to get their money out of the bank. Where, trying to get their money out of the bank, they can't do it. So instead of that, it's going to be more like banks are still going to exist, but they're going to be entirely different. Like you said, you think you call them financial service centers. It's a very accurate way, I think, of thinking of what banks are going to be, because we're going to be the ones who are empowered. And an individual cannot be empowered unless they have open and transparent and decentralized access to their wealth, and that they're the ones who are sitting in the driver's seat.
Correct.
And, but the quantum financial system is just so brilliant in that it covers all of these different areas, and it's going to prevent evil from being used as a tool to, it's going to prevent money from being used as a tool by evil to enslave us, and of course, to perpetrate all of these crimes against humanity. And
Right.
so, I think in a lot of ways that, there's so many different aspects to this puzzle. There's the geopolitical side, there's, the economic side, there's, the military side, there's domestic politics, there's just so many different avenues that we could go down. But I think there are a lot of different dominoes that have to fall first, I think, before we see the full rollout of this system. But I do believe it's there. I don't think that it's just theoretical at this point. I think all of the evidence, as far as I'm concerned, points to the rollout already happening. The public phase. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. 11 months ago, I posed a question to David Straight. I'm sure you know who he is.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. He teaches a course called, State National. And I started something. I'm usually very good at starting trouble. I need no help from nobody, believe me. And in 3 weeks, that video got literally 190,000 hits, and it was climbing still. It went over 200,000, whatever. I wiped my channel clean because I'm literally at odds with this, YT. And so the reality is that video got downloaded gazillions of times, literally. Now, fast forward 11 and a half months later, 30 million people are taking state national courses. He's not the only show in town, but he's one of, and his courses are full. And a lot of people go up to him and say, "Hey, I saw you on Mel Carmine." Yeah. Okay. So because I am, a rabbit hole diver, if you will, and I'm an extremist when it comes to certain stuff, I need to know that I didn't endorse him. I said, "Hey, there's something you might want to take a look at." And I let the people decide. So I've been working with Margie and Jack Flynn, who've been at this for longer than anybody, have literally won hundreds of thousands of cases when you start to equate into the equation their students. They're famous recently for going up against Delta and I want to choose my words carefully here as I'm trying to keep this as YT friendly as we can. Delta and United. A lot of the pilots there and a lot of the stewardess and a lot of the baggage handlers, mechanics, so on, that worked for those two airlines, many of them did not want to take that medical procedure against, that medical procedure that is being imposed on us against their own will without making any gestures. You guys know what we're talking about. Anyway, they have gotten so good at writing affidavits with shark teeth, okay, and they're sharp, man. They're up there in age, but they're as sharp as a tack, seriously. And they presented this document. We proceeded to do 10 classes with them that we're going to release on my website, QFS1776.com, free of charge, pro bono, zero. If you want to donate to the Flynns, you can, but you don't have to. If you don't have $5, we understand. But this is the most powerful thing that I think we all need to study. It is the Constitution. The Constitution, the original Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the one that was written in 1787 and implemented in 1789, that Constitution. And these people have literally won 99.9999. They're not lawyers, but they know how to talk to the lawyers. They know how to talk to the prosecutors in the event that they go to court. They have had many judges step down because they don't know how to really handle these people, because they know how to ask some very tough questions. First of all, they don't give them any nobility whatsoever. They don't call them your honor and all that bullshit, right? They basically call them by name. Hey,
take control of the courtroom. Yeah.
Mr. Rogers, are you here to abide by the Constitution of America, the original Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution that was written in 1787? If they say no, you know what they go? They proceed, and they have these fancy words that they've got this down to a science, and you're going to learn this in our course, free of charge at QFS1776.com. They say, sir, you are dismissed. You are disqualified. You know how many judges literally had to step down? And when they step down, they forfeit their position, they forfeit their salary, they forfeit their pension. They're done.
Yeah,
this is the most powerful. Everybody should stop. Everything you're doing, stop right now. Stop right there. And come and learn the Constitution of America, the original Bill of Rights, because this is how you take your country back. Yes, Jassara, Nassara. Listen, I love to have fun. I love to, goof off like everybody else. I have a PhD in goofing off. But the reality is, we have to pay attention so that history never repeats itself. This will expedite Nassara, Jassara. This will expedite the quantum financial system. Because if we get the 100th monkey syndrome, or the 100,000 monkey syndrome, as I like to call it, and we all beating the drum, and we all become learned, because listen, I don't care. See, your kids right now, homeschool, start them at QFS1776.com. In 2 weeks.